Hello, everybody. My name is Rick Turner, and I'm a senior principal analyst on the cybersecurity team at Omdia. It's an analyst house you may or may not have heard of. I'm here with the great Gagan Singh and Jennifer Ellard, both from Elastic. Looking forward to our conversation today. We're going to be talking about observability and security, what the company has to offer in those spaces, how they intersect, and all other good things. So I'm going to go straight to it, and I'll let the guys introduce themselves with their respective job titles as they pitch in the first time. So look, guys, let me start off with this. Observability is a term that I've been seeing bandied around, God, for at least the last couple of years. And I always think of it as the next generation monitoring, but I don't know if I'm right about that. So please do tell me, how does Elastic define observability? And then what does it offer in that market to either of you or both?
Yeah. Thanks, Rick. Great to be here and really excited to be with you and Jen here. So I lead product marketing for observability at Elastic here. The one thing I would say around observability is it's interesting because as you alluded to, monitoring has gone through evolution where, there were a lot of silos in the previous world where it was data center, but as customers and enterprises moved over to the cloud world, those silos tended to disappear, the complexity of the applications increased, and suddenly those tools that were siloed were not really effective, right? And so this whole concept of trying to bring the different signals as you would, the metrics, logs, traces, and now profiling together has to get insights is what really observability is about. But I think the other thing that has been sort of a little bit of a misnomer and been used interchangeably in the industry is the fact that you could still have a lot of signals. They could be still siloed. You're operating in silos, but ultimately, how do you connect the operational signals with the business data and so you're driving the right outcomes, you're driving the right SLAs, is what really observability is about, right? And so that's how Elastic views it. It's a data problem. How are you able to get the data structured, unstructured, and get insights from there, right? And we see a lot of similarities with, I think, how the security world has evolved around that. So that's sort of our take around observability.
Great stuff. Jen, anything you want to add there, mate?
Goggin is definitely the observability expert on the call. I think he's done a great job of talking through what we offer. From an outsider's perspective, I run our security product marketing team. My name is Jennifer Ellard. And what I've been really impressed to see over the last several years at Elastic is the innovation and the development that we've done in the observability space, thinking about things differently than our competitors. And I think Goggin and team have really kind of pushed that forward and tried to approach the problem uniquely and differently.
Yeah. And to Jen's point, right? That's where, if you look at how Elastic, we view it as a platform and on which the solution is built. And so you've got, the generative AI capabilities, the vector database capabilities that we have, which traditionally were a domain of, for example, were inherently leveraged a lot in search. And we've been able to leverage that very extensively for really providing, moving from this sort of charts and graphs to a very interactive intelligence system, which is driven by what we call search AI.
Understood. Now, look, coming to my day job, security, Elastic has been building a security portfolio for some years now. Could you possibly describe it to us, to me and the audience? And if you could sort of enumerate the various products that you guys are offering in the security space, particularly. I'm interested to get a picture of the portfolio as it stands today in security from Elastic.
Absolutely. So we've been at this for about 4 years, give or take. And the benefit of working at Elastic is you get to build on the Elastic platform. And so because of the elasticity, the speed, relevance that the Elastic Search AI platform provide, we can solve different use cases. Goggin just talked about observability. So 4 years ago, the team decided that we could solve a lot of security use cases. And so they started building a fully fledged SIM product to offer to market. And since that time, we've really further developed the offering to really evolve it to what I would call a security analytics solution. It really has the full gamut of security. And so at the heart of it, again, is the core underlining, features of a SIM. So you get the correlation, the normalization, the automation, the alerting, the dashboarding, all of the things that you would expect from your SIM. And as most organizations that have a SIM, they want to be able to take action at that point when they actually see what's happening in their environment. So we offer two different viewpoints. We allow individuals to bring their own security vendors and their integrations to the table. We call that extended protections, where essentially we will allow the organization to take action with those native tools that they already have, like CrowdStrike or Palo Alto or what have you. And so we integrate with 400 different integrations. We have tons of integrations that you can make this happen with. Then the second way we allow organizations to take that action is via natively. And so with that, they can use our Elastic Agent to take the actions with the Elastic Agent versus with those legacy tools. But openly, like, security is a team sport. And so the more integrations we have, the easier we make it for organizations to leverage our product. We're happy to do it. So it just depends on what they need at their level, within their businesses.
Understood. Great stuff. It's fair to say, I think, that the majority of modern enterprises today, enterprise customers and enterprise businesses generally, I think they're characterized generally by a hybrid infrastructure. In other words, a mixture of on-prem and cloud-based assets. Not too many people are 100% cloud native yet, may never get there. Certainly in the case of the financial sector, there's always going to be stuff sitting on premises, I would suspect. So how do observability and security intersect in these hybrid environments? And how can teams take advantage of the collaboration between those two disciplines?
The way our customers and prospects are looking at this is they're really trying to get some leverage between all of the different tools that they have within their organization, whether that's observability tools, vendors that they're working with, security, right? I think on average, average SOC has over, I think it's 8 different tools. And I think that's a very low number. I think it should probably be in the teens, but
absolutely,
they have a lot going on. And the way that Elastic approaches the problem is we think about a security being a data problem. So it's just security data that you're looking at. Well, the same can be said for observability. It's observability data, all the logs and the metrics, just like the events and the incidents that we have in the security landscape. And so once you start thinking about the data sources that you have as one holistic data mesh or data lake, then you can actually start leveraging really sound storage and consumption in a hybrid environment or on premise. So the way that the Elastic is set up from a platform standpoint, it really does give you that 1 + 1 = 3 when you're really trying to think about how can I possibly consolidate some vendors in my landscape, but really leverage all of this data. And why it's so important is because there's oftentimes, I love you security professionals, but oftentimes we create application performance issues for our friends in observability and the SRE team. And there's a little bit of finger pointing, and we don't intentionally do it, but it could be because of an attack or something that's going on in the environment. And so why it's important is within one lens, you can see both from an observability, application performance, and a security standpoint. And that's really where you get that real big win from a organizational IT standpoint. When you've got teams working together, less finger pointing, more collaboration, less time to get things remediated and resolved.
Yeah, that's well said, Jen. And I think in general, I would say, there's it's the finger pointing, but it's also the number of tools, the time it takes you to resolve problems. Then as a result, you've got multiple tools in observability, you've got multiple tools in security. But at the end of the day, if you're breached, there's a problem. It doesn't matter who, somebody's got to fix it. And it's a time, it's ticking. And so I think that's where to Jen's point, I think the fundamental way we approach it is that observability and security are like literally two sides of the same coin. They're all using the same data. It's also got to do with the retention duration of the data as well, right? Because you want to be able to analyze it. And oftentimes, a lot of teams are collecting data in duplicative ways, and they're trying to throw away the data then because it gets too expensive. So we do all of that in a very cost-effective way. But the other thing also is we have certain things like, for example, support for areas like OpenTelemetry, like Elastic Common Schema, which we've also donated to OpenTelemetry. And the big thing in there is that it helps customers see everything in the same format, right? It's basically we are able to create a common format so people are not, there's no blind spots left, right? And so that's really important, giving you complete visibility, eliminating those blind spots. In fact, a lot of our customers, enterprises that we hear from, they start with one side of the solution, let's say one of the solutions in Elastic, and then they progress to the other one because one, it's all available within Elastic, and two, it just the velocity and the increase in collaboration we see between the teams is tremendous. And then that's just the productivity, the value just gained is just incredible. So we think that, and there's obviously the DevSecOps word that has been bandied around for a while now. To some extent, it's reality. To some extent, it's still a buzzword. But I think there's progress being made, and we believe we can push the industry in that direction.
May I congratulate you? We've spent all this time and we've only just mentioned DevSecOps. Well done, us. Well, I think we've done even better. We've managed not to say AI yet, mate. But hey, listen, this is great. So look, I want to know this. How do you guys think that cloud computing and all the modern development, code development, application development methodologies that are swirling around now, how do you think that they are changing observability and security? And what should users, what should your customers, and what should enterprise users be thinking about when they're approaching these two worlds and how they are being impacted by cloud and by modern development?
I think the first thing I would say is with just sort of the cloud and the modern application development, right? There's a couple of areas of complexity that have been introduced. One is that the time to market overall as customers go increasingly digitized has significantly reduced, right? So organizations are making production level code changes, let's say multiple times a day or multiple times a week, right? And that suddenly, when you're a security team, you have to deal with it. The code moves much faster. There's no longer months of soak time you can have in some sort of a stage environment before you push it to production. But then the other thing is, I think the overall, if you look at the development teams, they're also increasingly more, I would say, aware of the fact that they're responsible as much for the security of the applications they're building than just the security team itself, right? And so they're thinking about the entire the pipeline, the CI/CD pipeline, in terms of making sure that there's no vulnerabilities that get introduced and so on, right? And still being able to track that, right? So that's how this rapid pace of change and the ability of developers, for example, to be able to bring in, let's say, all sorts of external code. It could be open source code or some other containers, images that can be pulled in, and your application developed on top. So you've got to make sure that all of those are airtight, because people are always, the bad actors are always looking for vulnerabilities. And so that's what we believe is continuously changing, where there no longer can be, security cannot be just coming at the end in terms of production, but it's embedded throughout your development lifecycle. And that's what observability and security come together. That's how observability solutions and Elastic, for example, has continued to evolve to make sure that we are part of the process, that you're able to tag things appropriately. And so it's observability and security together for us. And it's even more so when you're looking at a modern environment.
Jen, over to you, mate.
Thank you, Gagan. I love the points that you make. I think that being with Elastic and having this search, our search group focuses on developers. So we think that the developers are quite important across our entire company. And so thinking about their development lifecycle, whether it in the cloud, when they're developing in the cloud, is we ultimately think that way. It's kind of like in our DNA, if you will. So we think that like the combination of obviously observability and security together on one platform make it much easier for those groups to develop cohesively. Additionally, we have a lot of customers who are still super heavy on-prem, and they have very little in the cloud. And so we have to work in an environment for all of these individuals, right? Whether it's a hybrid, whether it's an air-gapped system in a federal, a data center somewhere, like we have to work in all of those kind of situations. And so the beauty is the Elastic platform is highly flexible with regards to, where it can be deployed, how it can be used. We work with any of the hyperscalers too. So it's just a matter of making it very customizable and readily available for our customers.
Excellent. And this is my last question, promise. And it is this one. Look, if we can focus for a moment back onto the security side of things, what I'd like to know is, what would you say are the main challenges that are faced by a SecOps team in the current environment?
Okay, so imagine you are an analyst and you're trying to figure out how many of these alerts that came in today were the most important. And there's thousands, hundreds of alerts, and you have to kind of figure that out. And you have alerts from yesterday that you're still trying to sift through as well, right? So you're constantly like chasing your tail, trying to get to the right ones. And
Agreed.
One of your biggest fears is that you have the alert in there, but it's so buried and it's a big breach and it's a big attack, but you miss it because you're trying to get through all the other ones. And so what Elastic Security is really trying to do is take some of these mundane, time-consuming, error-prone steps in the process that an analyst has to go through to get to the results, and take the what we try to call take the suck out of it. So we're trying to automate those. We're trying to leverage things like generative AI. I had to say it, Rick. We're leveraging those really fantastic technologies to help the analyst's job be more efficient, be better, for them to have like more control over what they're working on. Because it must not feel good when you've got like hundreds and thousands of alerts in your backlog. And so that's part of what we're trying to do. We've offered a couple of different features this year that really focus on helping with that. We're looking at also considering, a lot of organizations right now are, should we stay with this particular SIEM vendor? Should we go to another SIEM vendor? There's been a lot of like market consolidation recently from a perspective. You have to try to keep up with all that too, right? So if you are debating on taking on a new SIEM and migrating to a SIEM, it's a laborious task as well. It could be months of consulting services. It could be lots of time to get all of your roles and detection, mechanisms all into the new system. And so what we're trying to do is help with that as well. Not only because it's, kind of a nice time, but just because migrations shouldn't be so much of a heavy lift. And so we're trying to help organizations with their migration, their deployments into another SIEM, and really ease that for them, leveraging generative AI to do it. Because frankly, generative AI is really helpful right now. It's, many of the models are super inexpensive to use. You can essentially very quickly get that information. We've really tried to integrate where we think individuals need a little help along the way with their current security process, not create new process, but just where they need a little help just to speed them up trying to take things that would have taken days to hours or minutes. And that's kind of like our philosophy right now, and what we're trying to do on the SecOps side in particular.
Got it. Gagan, now that I know we were talking in Jen's bailiwick there, the security world, but anything you'd like to add to that, or?
The only thing I would say is, to Jen's point, right? I mean, we haven't used the word generative AI too much, but I think what we have overall as Elastic is a generative AI based solution, which we typically call the AI assistant, which is very real, right? It's an interactive solution. It's production ready. Production gate, which is being used by enterprises. It's complemented by our vector database as well as leveraging our retrieval augmented generation, the RAG capabilities. So if you look at all of that, this is all built on our foundational search AI capabilities that I think truly make it quite differentiated in the market, and I would say reduce toil. I mean, if that's the right word, reduce the effort that's required, whether it's the SRE on the observability side or the analyst on the SOC side, right? So I think that's like really trying to get that relevant insights and make sure that, you're able to detect problems much, much faster and resolve them. So
perfect. Yeah, well, look, I mean, I'm definitely one takeaway from this conversation is to take the suck out of it. I just love that one. I'm going to keep it that one. And the other one is actually, I really like Jen just dropped into the conversation there, elasticity. I think that might be that maybe you guys should really think about either calling your headquarters building elasticity, but or else maybe just call it the process by which you adopt Elastic. But it's either way, it's really good. Listen, Gagan and Jen, thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed it. I've learned a lot. I hope the audience has too. Until the next time. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.